Good afternoon, and thank you for joining our briefing on the City of Philadelphia's response to gun violence. This briefing is for press only. If you are not a member of the press, please log out and watch today's live stream on the City of Philadelphia's Facebook page or tune into 900 AM or 96.1 FM WURD. We will begin our briefing with remarks by Mayor Jim Kenney. Mayor, you have the floor.
Thanks, Kevin. Good afternoon, everyone. As hard as it is to believe, we're closing in on the end of summer as students go back to school and eventually the weather hopefully gets cooler by the day. As we approach Labor Day weekend, the traditional end of summer, we're going to highlight preparations being taken in advance of what is always a busy weekend here in Philadelphia. With Made in America this weekend and other events happening across the city, the police department in a few moments will discuss our approach to keeping folks safe this holiday season. It's been a difficult summer again this year as our city, like so many cities across the country, have been dealing with the epidemic of gun violence. Our hearts break for the families of everyone affected by gun violence. It's especially painful to me to see children impacted, both physically and mentally, by this senseless violence. Please know that our team continues to work around the clock to solve this crisis and to keep our young people safe, especially as they head back to school this week. Before I turn it over to Erica Atwood, Senior Director, Office of Policy and Strategic Initiatives for Criminal Justice and Public Safety, I want to take a moment to highlight the federal support we've been getting on this issue lately. Yesterday, as you may have heard, President Biden laid out a new vision to give local municipalities more tools to combat violent crime in our communities, including calling on Congress for $37 billion for crime prevention programs, as well as banning assault weapons as we did in this country in the late 1990s. These are important steps, but we need Congress to act. There are too many lives at stake not to address this issue from the federal level on down, including the Commonwealth. In addition, I also want to highlight the U.S. Attorney Jacqueline Romero and her office for I want to highlight their extensive investigation work in charging folks from out of state with illegally trafficking more than 50 firearms into the city. We finally have a real partner on the federal level here locally. I'm glad that these criminals will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will send a message to others who seek to illegally flood our streets with guns. Every illegal gun we keep off our streets and out of Philadelphia is one less that has the opportunity to get into the wrong hands with deadly consequences. Separately, I had the opportunity to meet with U.S. Attorney Romero earlier this month, and I'm thankful that we have a strong partner at the federal level to help us address the scourge of gun violence that continues to afflict communities across our city. Now for more updates on our Office of Criminal Justice and Public Safety, including updates on our 211 hotline and the city's recent listening tours, I want to turn it over to Erica Atwood. Erica?
Thank you, Mayor Kenney. Good afternoon, everyone. As I mentioned, I'd like to begin with today with CJPS's announcement, providing you a quick update on our 211 violence prevention hotline. Launched in March of this year, the hotline is now fully staffed and ready to support community members with resources, programs, and other services for themselves, their family members, and neighbors. To date, the hotline has received roughly 500 calls from Philadelphians and served almost 300 people by connecting them with services and other resources. With the hotline fully staffed, operators are waiting to answer calls from community members who are looking for preventative or interventive services for them and their loved ones. To get connected to the hotline, dial 211 and then the number 3. From there, a resource navigator will ask you some simple questions and put you in touch with the resources you need. Please remember that 211 hotline does not replace 911. And if you are witnessing or experiencing a violent crime in real time, please dial 911 immediately. Next, I'm excited to announce that our office, the Office of Policy and Strategic Initiatives for Criminal Justice and Public Safety, is continuing our Roadmap to Safer Communities listening tour through this fall. Meetings began last week and will continue through September, and then we'll put out another schedule for the continued fall meetings. The community listening tour is an opportunity for neighbors to network with each other, city officials, and service providers who are at the heart of violence prevention in the city of Philadelphia. I personally attend the majority of these meetings and consider community engagement to be central to our mission in the criminal justice and public safety cluster. I'd like to provide you a brief overview of what we learned in the spring wing of our listening tour. This spring, the Office of CJPS hosted a series of community meetings as part of the 2022 Philadelphia for Roadmap Safer Communities listening tour. Over the course of 6 weeks, CJPS engaged more than 300 individuals through 10 community meetings throughout Philadelphia, specifically with our communities most vulnerable and exposed to gun violence, including South Philadelphia, Germantown, Nicetown, North Philadelphia, Longcrest, and Mantua. The listening tour of Philadelphia's gun violence prevention strategies are informed by the Roadmap to Safer Communities, our public health approach to gun violence. The roadmap is informed by 4 tenets: connected and thriving youth, young adults, coordinated city services and planning, strong community engagement and partnerships, and safer and healthier neighborhoods. We structured the community listening tour around the roadmap. Next slide. CJP, we had the following goals for engaging with community throughout the listening tour. We wanted to provide an overview of the update of the roadmap, as many community members were not familiar with our strategy. Gauge interest and knowledge and understanding of that roadmap. Have a guided and authentic dialogue about gun violence and what neighbors are experiencing, and build relationships with community members throughout the city. Next slide. For this listening tour, we asked the following questions. What is one thing you hope to get out of these meetings? When you think about gun violence in communities, what is it that you think is needed most to reduce shootings in your neighborhood? What is working or not working in your communities? What is your vision for your neighborhood? What does a safe and healthy community look like to you? How are you connected to solutions in community? And how would you like to stay in contact with the city? Next slide. As mentioned before, we were fortunate enough to have over 300 participants attend our meetings, and we learned a lot from Philadelphians all over the city. And we've highlighted some of our learnings in the following slides, categorized by the tenets of the roadmap. Connected and thriving youth and young adults and families. Folks are really talking about mentorship, especially for Black men and boys, conflict resolution programs in schools and community, job and entrepreneurial support and availability, and better communication between the city and community members. As it relates to coordinated city services, it's removing historic systemic barriers to access to resources, funding, and opportunities, stronger gun laws, enhanced the visibility and messaging of programs, services, and resources that already exist, investment in our educational and city infrastructure, particularly for vulnerable neighborhoods, and just stronger, more just government, and less restrictions on our funding. Next slide. For our stronger community engagement, it's really about rebuilding the trust with community and police, which is one of the efforts of this listening tour. Increased funding for community orgs and nonprofits, more community-based programming into what's happening in communities that people can walk to, get to very quickly. And the amplification of youth voice in solutions and conversations. And last, with safer and healthier community neighborhoods, it's a stronger and swifter coordinated law enforcement and police response, and livable wages. And I'd like to say thank you to Commissioner Outlaw and her leadership and the captains in the districts that attended the meetings with CJPS. We did this as a team. Next slide. As I mentioned before, CJPS continues to our listening tour throughout September. These meetings will be an update community members of what we found out in the first meetings, and discuss what happens next with regard to violence prevention in the city and what it looks like. For this next level of the listening tour, all of our meetings will be in person. Our next meeting is on, next slide. Our next meeting is on September 8th at New Hope Partnership Education, New Hope Partnership for Education at 2601 North 11th Street. We do provide food for all members who attend. And for more information or to register, or if you're interested in hosting a listening tour, you can email cjps@phila.gov. I look forward to continuing to connect with people in our communities, especially those who attend our meetings and making their voices heard. With that, I will turn it over to Commissioner Outlaw for our law enforcement update this week.
Commissioner, you're muted. Sorry, if you can restart. Thank you.
I said so many amazing things. Thank you. But what I was saying was that Monday marked the first day back to school and full-time in-person learning for many of our Philadelphia School District students. And while we all know that there's been some anxiety for parents and students alike surrounding safety, both in and on their way to the classroom from a public safety standpoint, we continue to work with the school district, our local businesses, and community volunteers to ensure that our students have safe passage to and from school. Safe passage for children traveling to school was discussed at our last press conference, if you recall, when we explained the Safe Corridors program. Safe Corridors is a volunteer program spearheaded by the School District of Philadelphia. And that program is a collaboration between the district, businesses, community members, all who are stakeholders that aim to provide extra supervision for students. We will continue to be on hand throughout the school year to assist with these efforts, particularly during the start of the school day and during dismissal. We will also be maintaining a strong line of communication with our school district partners to ensure that we're working together to address issues that may be arising with youth early before they spiral out of control. I've said repeatedly, this is a collaborative effort and it requires everyone's involvement, from students to parents to the community. We're excited, quite frankly, that our youth are back in the classroom again, and we wish them the very best in this new school year. As I transition into talking about the beginning of the school year, I'd like to talk about the Labor Day weekend, because we know that Labor Day typically signals the end of summer season here in Philadelphia. And before the unofficial end of summer arrives on Monday, the city will once again take part in the Made in America Festival, or MIA. Some road closures took effect on Sunday around the Art Museum area, and these road closures are expected to last until Tuesday morning. If anyone needs more information about the road closures, they can go to the City of Philadelphia's website, which is phila.gov for more detailed information. As it pertains to the Made in America event itself, we will be working closely with the Office of Emergency Management, the Philadelphia Fire Department, and the event's private security to ensure the safety and security of concert goers. To make sure that all event participants, visitors to the city, and residents remain safe, we will also be assigning plainclothes and uniformed personnel in and around the event. Again, the safety of everyone is our top priority and is paramount. From all of us here at the PPD, we wish everyone a safe, healthy, and happy Labor Day weekend. Our officers will be on hand throughout the city as we celebrate the end of summer, and we will see you all out there. I will now turn it to Deputy Commissioner Joel Dales, who's the Deputy Commissioner of Patrol Operations, and he's going to discuss our recent crime trends and what we're seeing in our pinpoint grants. And then he will be followed by Chief Inspector Frank Venor, Chief of Investigations, who will provide updates on some cases that we wish to highlight this week. DC Dales.
Thanks, Commissioner. Can you pull up the slides, please? Okay, next slide. Okay, I will start with the citywide homicide and shooting victim stats. Looking at the top of the chart, year to date as of August 28th of this year, Philadelphia had 361 homicides and 1,579 shooting victims. In comparison to last year, homicides are up 3%, 361 this year versus 351 last year. And the shooting victims are also up 3%, 1,579 this year versus 1,531 last year. As of yesterday, homicides are up 2% and shooting victims are up 4%. Looking at the bottom left of the chart, it shows the motives for the homicides. The top three motives remain the same. Number one, arguments. Number two, drugs. And number three, domestic. And the current clearance rate is now 44%. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide shows the 2022 citywide homicide stats for the cause of death in reference to our homicides. Looking at the top of the chart, as of August 28th, we currently have 352 homicide cases. In addition, we also had to add 9 delayed homicide cases to the 2022 homicide count, meaning that the date of assaults occurred prior to 2022, and the victims had succumbed to their injuries this year. So therefore, the delayed cases are included in the 2022 count. The year of the assaults ranged from 1993 to 2021. Looking at the bottom of the chart, the top 3 causes of death are number 1, gunshot wounds, which is at 324. Number 2, blunt force trauma, which is at 17. And which is at 17. And number 3, stabbing, which is at 18. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide shows the 28-day comparison for shooting victims and homicides citywide. The blue bars represent the previous 28-day period, which is from July 4th to July 31st. And the orange bars represent the current 28-day period from August 1st to August 28th. So looking at the left of the chart, it shows the shooting victims up 6% citywide, 198 versus 210. And looking at the right of the chart, it shows homicides down 19%, 54 during the previous period and 44 during this period. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide shows the homicide stats in the pinpoint grids. The orange bars represent homicides in 2021, and the gray line represents homicides in 2022. Year to date, as of August 28th, the chart shows homicides at 0%, which were at even 241 this year as well as last year in the pinpoint grids. So in comparison to 2021, from the week of June 6th through the week of August 22nd, the chart shows a consistent decline in homicides and a slight increase at the beginning of the week of August 29th, which is at 0%. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide shows the shooting victim stats in the pinpoint grids. The yellow bars represent shooting victims in 2021, and the blue line represents shooting victims in 2022. Year to date, as of August 28th, the chart shows shooting victims down 7% in the pinpoint grids. In comparison to 2021, from the week of January 24th through the week of August 29th, the chart shows a consistent decline in shooting victims. Next slide, please. As of August 29th, 4,079 crime guns were recovered in our city. Last year, 4,048 crime guns were recovered by the end of August. As of yesterday, we have surpassed that number by 40 more crime guns this year. Next slide. And lastly, in reference to the properly made firearms, which is also known as ghost guns, that were recovered in our city. Year to date, as of August 29th, we are now at 387. Comparing this number to the total crime guns recovered by the end of August of last year, which is 371, we are showing a 4% increase. So with that, I will now turn it over to Chief Inspector Frank Venor, who is the Chief Inspector of the Detective Bureau, and he will speak about cases we wish to highlight. Frank?
Good afternoon. I will go over some incidents of gun violence that happened over the course of this past week or 2 weeks during this period. The homicide unit during this period made 5 arrests and obtained 4 arrest warrants for murder. The shooting investigation group, our group that investigates non-fatal shootings, made 14 arrests and had 3 arrest warrants for non-fatal shootings. All of those photos and details will be made available to you through Public Affairs. I'm just going to highlight a few of these cases that occurred during the course of this time. Some of them are arrests and some of them are cases we're still looking for help from the public on. The first case actually started in the beginning of August, 8/4, in the 5300 block of Paris in the 19th district, where decedent Derek Bly, 23-year-old, was shot and killed while sitting inside an SUV in the early morning hours of 8/4. He was accompanied by a 17-year-old who was also hit by gunfire that particular day. The homicide unit were able to develop probable cause and identify a Sean Rubles. That individual was eventually, they obtained a warrant for and were seeking that individual for several weeks. Just this Saturday, another shooting occurred in the 5200 block of Chestnut Street, where the shooting investigation group, their investigation very quickly led to this same individual, Sean Rubles. On Monday, both homicide and the shooting investigation group were able to track this individual down, and he was charged with murder and attempted murder on 2 individuals, and he's currently in custody. The next case I wanted to highlight is, it's also a homicide case. This case, we're looking for help from the public. This started on July 16th in the 2400 block of Kelly Drive. I believe I spoke about it in a previous press conference. We found decedent Talon Carter, 30-year-old male, shot on Kelly Drive there in a parking lot in the early morning hours of July 16th. The investigation led us to video which showed a group of individuals in a parking lot driving cars. Many of them are doing donuts with the cars. He was just watching. An argument ensues between the decedent, one of the males, and he was eventually shot during the course of this argument. The homicide unit was able to identify a Jameer Wiley, 21-year-old male, and they obtained a warrant just this week for murder. Anybody who has information on the whereabouts of Mr. Wiley is urged to call our tip line at 686-TIPS or 8477. And remember, in each and every homicide, there's a $20,000 reward offer. The next 2 cases are both non-fatal shooting cases that we're looking for help on. Both of them got some attention over this past weekend. Both occurred on Sunday, about 2 hours apart. The first case happened in the 5000 block of Rising Sun. In this case, father brought 2 of his young children, a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, into the barbershop to get haircuts. While they were waiting for their haircuts, the father exited to get some money. While he was outside, an individual walks into the barbershop, becomes involved in an argument with somebody in the rear of the barbershop. That argument turns to this male producing a gun, chasing that male through the barbershop. During the course of this, he fired his gun several times, and a 4-year-old male was hit once in the hand. He was taken to Einstein and was later stabilized and released to his parents. We today are releasing a photo through the Public Affairs Unit of an individual we believe is responsible for this shooting. If anyone may know this individual, again, please call our tip line at 215-686-TIPS or 8477. The next case also happened on Sunday about 2 hours earlier, a little after 3 p.m. in the 3000 block of West York. In this case, a 13-year-old was walking to the store on the corner there on York Street. While walking there, he encounters 2 groups of individuals. One group, there's 3 males exited a car and began to fire at the other group. When our 13-year-old sees that there's gunfire in the area, he starts to run. One of these males we now know turned and fired in his direction. He was struck once in the leg. No one else was injured with gunfire except this 13-year-old. We need a lot of help on this. We have some information. We have a little bit of video, and these males are wearing masks. So if anyone has information on this, we're urging them to give us a call and help us. And the last case I'm going to highlight involves a carjacking case, which occurred on 8/24 Thursday of last week, 8000 block of Rodney. In this case, a 69-year-old was unloading groceries when he was approached from behind by an individual we now know as Eric Fields, a 24-year-old male. Male produced a gun and attempted to take his black Chrysler 300. This individual complainant struggled with the male, eventually disarmed them, and during the course of that struggle, the gun fired and actually struck the defendant. Defendant was later arrested by police as he fled the area in the 1000 block of George's Lane, and he's been charged with that carjacking and shooting. One of the things I wanted to bring your attention is that investigation didn't stop there. This individual was further charged with the carjacking that occurred on August 20th in the 7900 block of Lober Street. And we now know that after that carjacking, the individual took that Subaru Outback that he stole up to Cheltenham and committed another robbery. So he's now in custody for all 3 robberies, and he will be prosecuted both here and in Cheltenham for those crimes. And just touching on carjackings, we're still present a problem for us. We have made a lot of arrests this year, 270 arrests that led to some kind of charges involving some of these carjackings. But we want to urge people who are parking or sitting in a parked car or getting ready to park. They, through our statistics, seem to be the most vulnerable. So be very conscious of your surroundings and your distractions. Most of them are on the phone and not paying attention to what's going on around them. At least 20 of these offenders that we've arrested in these cases have been taken to federal prosecution. Carjacking is a federal crime. So we want to make sure that people understand we're still reviewing cases, and the U.S. Attorney is working with us to take many of these cases federal through our task force, which involves ATF, FBI, and the marshals working along with us. Also to say about the carjackings, 40% of them are still shown to be juveniles. And so far this year, we've recovered about 70% of the vehicles that were stolen, and are working every day to find others to lead us to more evidence. With that, I'll turn things back over to Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Inspector Venor, and to all of our speakers today. We will now move to Q&A for members of the press. We ask that outlets coordinate ahead of time and that one representative from each media outlet ask questions. Reporters are asked to limit their questions to 2 or fewer for this first round, and if there is time for a second round, we'll go into a second round of questions. Armando is available for Spanish interpretation as needed. So if you'd like to ask a question, please use the raise your hand feature, and we'll go down the line. So first up, Carolina Rodriguez of Univision. Carolina.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Hola, Armando.
Buenos días, Carolina.
Saludos. Tengo 2 preguntas. La primera es en referencia a la balacera que se reportó esta madrugada en el área de Kensington frente a una escuela. Tenemos muchos padres que nos están preguntando qué hubiese sucedido si esa balacera ocurría en horas cuando los estudiantes estuvieran en los salones de clase. Se sabe que una bala pudo entrar, acceder a la instalación. ¿Cuál sería el mensaje a los padres?
The question that Carolina has for us, what would be the message for parents today who are asking what would have happened if the shootout that took place across the school in Kensington had happened during school hours? Because we know that one bullet did enter the classroom.
For police or for me or for who?
¿Para quién es el mensaje, Carolina? ¿Para la policía? ¿Para el alcalde? ¿Para quién?
Para ambos, for both.
For both.
I mean, certainly it would have been a tragic situation to have children in the school during the course of that shooting, which happened at 1 a.m. in the morning. During the course of kids going to school and being dismissed from school, there are increased police patrols and coordination. We probably would have had enough visibility there that incident probably would have taken place, but because it took place at 1 in the morning, they felt less constrained to do what they did. But we'd have to take it case by case and just try to keep our kids as safe as possible.
Lo que nos responde el alcalde es que ciertamente hubiera sido algo trágico de que estuviera sucedido durante las horas de los escolares, porque esto sucedió a la 1 de la mañana y básicamente la presencia policial a través de patrullas se incrementa en las horas de salida y las horas de llegada de los estudiantes. Nosotros tenemos una buena coordinación al respecto y obviamente la falta de visibilidad de la presencia policial le envalentonó a esta persona a hacer esto y se sintieron menos restringidos por la presencia policial. Nosotros tenemos que evaluar esto caso por caso. Gracias.
Gracias, Armando. Mi segunda pregunta va por la misma línea. 149 víctimas de violencia armada, de acuerdo con un informe de la Oficina del Contralor, son menores de edad hasta este lunes, por lo menos. Entonces, ¿qué nos dice eso de nuestra ciudad? ¿Cuál es el mensaje de las autoridades, de la comisionada y demás?
This is a request for a message and a commentary from the mayor and the commissioner. And the question is that as of this Monday, 149 victims of armed violence are underage minors, according to the comptroller. What is this telling us about our city?
Telling us that we have a city that's in a state where guns are too readily available to anyone who wants one. And the people who get availability of the guns use them in reckless manners. As I've said before, if I were the king of Pennsylvania, I would eliminate all guns except for law enforcement and the military. I mean, we, as you've seen in this report today, we've taken more guns off the street this year than we did last year. We'll continue to do that, which means our police are working extremely hard to get those guns out of bad guys' hands, and we'll continue to do that. But as I said, everything that we're putting in place will have an effect, a positive effect. But as long as we have the flow of guns we have in Pennsylvania, we're going to continue to have an uphill battle.
El alcalde nos dice que obviamente vivimos en una ciudad, dentro de un estado, donde las armas de fuego están demasiado disponibles a cualquier persona que les pueda encontrar, y esas personas que reciben estas armas de fuego se comportan de una forma descuidada. Nosotros, en caso de ser yo, rey de Pensilvania, restringiría el acceso y la posesión de armas de fuego para las agencias de orden y para los militares. Y por supuesto, seguimos de cerca este informe, y también ahí dice que hemos retirado más armas de circulación de la que hicimos el año pasado. Es algo difícil, vamos a continuar tomando medidas según lo que podamos, pero es el resultado del efecto de tener una presencia de armas no registradas en demasía en nuestra comunidad. Muchas gracias.
And I'll quickly add to that, Armando. I think our messaging from the PPD standpoint, actually from the city standpoint, has been very consistent. During 2020, we saw that our shooting victims and our shooters were becoming younger and younger. And when the schools were closed, we lost a lot of our warm touch points, the ability to connect our young people with services, knowing where they are if they weren't in school. And so, you know, when I shared my excitement about, you know, school starting up again, the same way I did, you know, when students returned to in-person learning, even before then, it's because, again, it's that warm touch point that we all look forward to having. If we know of a young person that's involved or potentially involved in some sort of either conflict or something that could lead to potential harm, whether it's gun violence or any other sort of harm, we know who we can contact to make sure we can do everything we can to intervene. That's what's going to be important, not just now, but moving forward, is getting ahead of the shootings before they start, whether it's retaliatory or if there is, you know, conflict that's going on in the schools or in social media. So that's why the use of data and intelligence is so important. But we noticed this trend quite some time ago. And that's why it's important when we have these pressers. That's why we share with you the other services that are available to our young people, whether it's us referring our young people through PPD, but also letting community know, but there are resources available, because like the mayor mentioned, there are more guns falling out of the sky. What used to be a fight after school or before school, what we're seeing has now turned into a shooting because a gun has been introduced. So I think this is a theme that has been consistent, and that we're all working very diligently to address. Thank God, no one, you know, was hurt when that round went into the school building. It absolutely would have been tragic. We could, woulda, coulda, shoulda all day. Any shooting is tragic, and we're just doing what we can to get ahead of these shootings before they occur.
Nos agrega la comisionada Outlaw que este ha sido el mensaje congruente que ha presentado el Departamento de Policía de Filadelfia y la ciudad de Filadelfia, que en el año 2020 nos dimos cuenta de que la mayoría de las víctimas y los tiradores eran cada vez más jóvenes, y obviamente con las escuelas cerradas a raíz de lo que sucedió por la pandemia, no ha sido posible establecer el contacto que tenemos ahora para dejarle saber a la gente joven de los servicios que están disponibles. Agrega la comisionada Outlaw cuán emocionada se siente ella por el comienzo de las clases presenciales, y que eso nos va a permitir a nosotros establecer un contacto con la gente joven, y se pide a las personas que sepan de algún joven que esté involucrado o esté metiéndose en conflictos que pudieran llevar a peligro o a violencia, que lo reporten, porque hay recursos disponibles y hay que saber a quién contactar para poder intervenir a tiempo antes de que empiecen estos problemas de los tiroteos, ya sea por una venganza que suceda en la escuela o a través de lo que suceda en los medios sociales. Es una tendencia que ya tiene tiempo de darse, y nosotros vamos a proporcionar servicios y referidos a las comunidades respecto a los servicios disponibles para tratar de retirar la mayor cantidad de armas de fuego también. importante que se tenga en cuenta que lo que anteriormente hubiera sido una pelea de puños al salir de la escuela se está convirtiendo en un tiroteo y esto se debe a la disponibilidad indiscriminada de armas en nuestra comunidad. Vamos a ser diligentes y vamos a seguir trabajando y obviamente es algo bueno de que ese tiroteo no haya sido en horas de escuela porque hubiera sido algo verdaderamente trágico, pero vamos a continuar haciendo nuestro mejor esfuerzo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Carolina. Thank you, Armando. We will now move to Ellie Rushing of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Ellie?
Hi, you've shared some, safety strategies from schools district-wide, and you've talked about what happened at Willard Elementary. I was wondering if you could share some specifics on like policing and safety strategies at Willard. As you know, this is it's located in a very active crime center. It's fairly kind of unique struggles to that area, and there's been numerous other shootings that happened on the immediate blocks of the school this year. Does this school have, a more robust officer presence than others? Does it look different than other schools when it comes to the safety coverage?
Joel?
Yes, actually Willard is one of our schools that are within our school safety zones. As they mentioned, the time when it occurred was way after hours, but that's one of our school safety zones. We work with the school police. We have officers assigned on the inside of the school. We're covering outside of the school. We're in constant communication with the principal. So you will see a police presence throughout the school year at that school and other schools that are also within our safety zones as well.
Okay, and then my other question maybe would be for, this one is on President Biden coming tonight. And I was wondering what the road closures will look like around, I think he's speaking at Independence Hall.
I think he's coming tomorrow. isn't
Oh, sorry, tomorrow.
he? Tomorrow.
What do the road
Commissioner-
closures look like?
I mean, I'm not speaking as a traffic engineer or traffic expert, but Secret Service shuts down anything they want, anytime they want. That's just the way it is, and that's the way it should be. So I suspect his route from the airport to Old City, 95. I don't know what route they're taking, but I'm sure all that's going to shut down, and there'll be a rolling shutdown of exits and entrances as he moves his way north, and then the same thing happens on the way south. I don't know unless Deputy Commissioner Dales or Tumar knows about the area around Independence Hall.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what you said, Mayor, to say we will be pushing that message out publicly to folks about those closures, but that is something that I know we have a few folks on here from the Office of Special Events and also police, but as the mayor said, that's in close coordination with the Secret Service and some federal partners. But we do typically push those messages out as the timing gets near about those closures, whether they're hard closures and enrollment closures as well.
Thanks, Ellie. We'll now go to Marcus Espinoza, Fox 29. Marcus?
Hi, sorry, this is actually Kelly Rule. I've logged into the wrong Zoom, so I apologize. Just one more quick question about Willard Elementary. Chief Anwar, maybe this is for you. Do you happen to know what these victims were doing there at that time and how many shooters there might have been?
So our investigation's still very early. We know there's 3 different types of ballistics, but what we do know now is there was an employee of the school district opened the school up, and it was unauthorized, but people were playing basketball. So nothing happened, violence inside, but when they exited and went back to their cars, somebody, obviously there was some problem, and they targeted these individuals as they walked out. So there's still more video and witnesses that we're speaking to, and we're working very closely with the school district. But they were inside playing basketball, and they did leave at just about 1:45, and that's when this occurred.
Thank you. And then kind of related to Biden, this is sort of a 2-part question. Commissioner, this may be for you or Mayor Kenny. There was a shooting, shots fired last night on Market between 3rd and 4th outside of Campos. There's surveillance video, and it just shows someone just kind of aimlessly shooting into the air. Wanted to see if you guys had any information on that particular shooting. And then, of course, the proximity to where Biden's going to be tomorrow. Obviously, this is heavily foot trafficked area. A lot of tourists come through this area. So just wanted to see if you had any response to that.
I'll comment on the incident real quick, and then I'll turn it over if somebody wants to talk about the president. But the incident that occurred There was quick police response. There's video recovered. A 15-year-old was arrested. We did not recover a weapon, but there's video of that individual firing a weapon. So there was an extensive search. So somebody obviously left the area with that gun. So we're still conducting an investigation into that, but someone was charged with that incident last night.
Chief Cram, you want to comment? You're muted.
Sorry about that. As far as traffic goes, expect traffic closures around 4 o'clock, and keep in mind that we have most of the parkway shut down as too, so there'll be some traffic disruptions. Pretty much from 4th to 6th, from Market down to Walnut. Security, we work very closely with our federal partners. Fortunately, the president is a frequent visitor to the city with his family, so it's not like this is new to us. We have a very layered security approach, and it's very integrated with our federal partners as well. But mainly for traffic, you can expect, like I said, that traffic box around between 4th and 6th from Market down to Walnut. But our intent right now is to keep traffic moving on Walnut Street.
Thanks, Kelly. Next up, we'll go to Kristen Johansson of KYW. Kristen.
Hello. 2 questions. One, wanted to see if you guys have any updates on the Shepherd Rec Center, like searching for the suspects, the additional 3.
So at this point, the 3 that were charged are being held on a very high bill. I think it's $3 million. The investigation's ongoing. We went back. Obviously, the vehicle that crashed was taken in a carjacking. So we're working and looking at around the airport hotel where that was taken to see if we get some better images, if it's the same individuals. But right now, we don't have anything further. We ran down a few leads that did not lead us to those individuals. So we're still working on it.
And this kind of is a follow-up to what everybody had been kind of speaking to before when it comes to teenagers and youth being the victims of gun violence. But you had just also mentioned that you arrested a 15-year-old yesterday. Do you by any chance have numbers or kind of maybe a trend or something about how many teens or younger people are being arrested for gun-related crimes?
I don't have that readily available now, but I could certainly get it for you. But we are arresting them. I see it every day. I mean, it's 40% of our carjacking arrests are juveniles. So I don't have the other numbers in front of me, though.
And I would argue that if we had one thing from the legislature, like anti-straw purchasing legislation, we may be putting a dent in that problem. Because obviously they can't go into a store, buy them themselves, into a gun dealer and buy them themselves. So someone must be providing them. And there's no penalty at this point for providing guns to people who shouldn't have them. And that's one thing we would ask for the legislature. And I don't understand why that's a hard thing to get.
I'm done, Kevin.
Thanks, Kristen. Next up, we'll go to Matt Petrillo of CBS 3. Matt.
Hey, good afternoon. Mayor, with the president coming tomorrow with the Made in America festival happening in a couple of days, can you just talk about what's going through your head in terms of
I will never talk about what's going through my head again, Matt. We're ready, Matt. That's how I'm not going to get into how I feel or my emotions or any of that stuff. That's doesn't work.
Okay. Well, I mean, in terms of, policing and safety, they were talking about how it's all layered. I mean, can you talk along those lines?
I mean, look, we have extremely capable people in command, and we have extremely capable people on the ground from the police officer on the beat or on the bike on up. We have great relationships with our federal partners at Secret Service, ATF, FBI, and we finally have a U.S. attorney that it considers herself a real partner as opposed to a finger pointer. We're working terrific with them, and they've been taking a lot of heat, a lot of weight off of us on these carjackings and some of these other federal adoptions. So we're far from perfect. We've got a long way to go, but we're finally getting the help. And with the announcement from the president yesterday in Scranton about these additional resources and additional money for police officers and the like, and hopefully an assault ban again, we may be going in the right direction.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Hey, Matt, if I can, I just also want to add, like, our folks are you've heard from a few on the call about just the preparedness around both visits, the MIA Festival and the President's visit. We're excited about both. The MIA is, we're in this 11th year of that particular event, which brings a lot of resources to the city. A lot of hotel rooms are booked and a lot of visitors. So we're excited, and our teams are excited to have been planning for that. And we're, I think like any other city, we're always excited for any visit from the president. As this president happens to be somewhat local, being a Delaware native. And like Chief Inspector Cram mentioned, he's always in town. But we're excited, and we think we're prepared for both events.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Tumar. Next up, we'll go to Courtney DeGeorge of Fox News. Courtney.
Hi, thank you so much. This question is for Commissioner Outlaw. I understand you guys are doing a lot of community listening sessions that are being held to hear from the people living in the city. But members of the North Philadelphia community that we talked to today are telling us that they provide their feedback and they don't really feel like anything changes. Has the police department considered changing their approach to tackling gun violence in the city?
Is that for me or Ms. Atwood?
Commissioner Outlaw.
Okay, well, the listening sessions piece was covered by Ms. Atwood, but I can tell you we're constantly reassessing our approach. Given that we have the same amount of resources and actually less, our resources as relates to staffing have dwindled. There's a lot of amazing things that I wish I could do right now today. But I have to make sure that my first priority is ensuring that we have officers, boots on the ground, that can answer the basic calls for 911, and then have another cadre of officers where we can prioritize gun violence and still make sure that we're prioritizing quality of life issues the best way that we can as well. So yes, we're constantly reassessing. We look at where the numbers take us, but we also recognize that there are some neighborhoods, and North Philly not being one of them, there are also neighborhoods that might not experience the same level of violent crime here in the city, but also believe, and they're right, that they should have an increased amount of police presence in their neighborhoods. So it's more than just a balancing act. It's also ensuring that we're beyond just being visible, but we can make an actual difference, and being willing to adapt to the changing needs of the small neighborhoods. Each neighborhood here in the city has different expectations and different needs. So it's a constant juggling act. We're constantly assessing and reassessing. So the answer is yes. And the whole point of having listening sessions or community engagement, or being out in the community and walking, or going to community meetings and hearing what they have to say, is for exactly that purpose.
Yeah, and if I could follow up, Courtney, with a comment. So with our community listening tours, this is an ongoing integrated process. And so it's not a one and done. We heard from community members. We're going to go back out and discuss how we incorporate this work. We're doing it in partnership with the police department, Commissioner Outlaw, and law enforcement leaders across the city, as well as other service providers. How we've addressed the listening tour is not just about enforcement. It's also just about how do we provide supports and services, including enforcement, to communities that are more vulnerable to gun violence.
Thank you both. We'll now move to Isabel Sanchez of Telemundo 62. Isabel?
Thanks, Kevin. Armando, respondieron ya varias de las preguntas que tenía, así que la principal que tengo ahora mismo es para beneficio, por supuesto, de la comunidad de habla hispana, acerca de los planes de seguridad para el festival de Made in America este fin de semana.
The question that I'm asking is basically for the benefit of the Hispanic community, as some of these answers have already been given in English. Can you tell us about the safety planning for this weekend and for the Made in America concert?
Tumar, you think? Or
Actually, I'll defer to Chief Inspector Cram and Deputy Commissioner Dales, and we have some others on the call who need to paint a better picture. Thanks, sirs.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Chief.
I would just say, listen, we're really good at handling big events in the city. We handle so many of them, right? So we start planning for this year's Made America at the end of last year's Made America. We're constantly looking at what's going on around the country, incorporating lessons learned from our own events, from those events, and really building a safe, fun environment for our attendees. In this particular, for Made in America, we have a great partner in Live Nation. We've worked closely together for years. It's a really good partnership, and between the police department coverage and the security that Live Nation provides, it's going to be a great event. I mean, people should come down. They should enjoy themselves. We've got great food inside, great food outside, and some great music. So just come on down and have a good time. I'm not worried. We've done our due diligence and planning and doing everything we can to provide a safe environment. So I'm looking forward to this weekend, and I'm sure our partners at Live Nation are as well.
Lo que nos responde el oficial Dales es que en adelanto a todo evento grande, nosotros empezamos a planificar la seguridad desde la conclusión del último evento de Made in America, el último año, y también hemos recogido lecciones a lo largo del país. Nosotros vamos a establecer un evento que sea divertido, seguro, en un entorno en el cual tenemos una asociación con Live Nation de muchos años ya, que nos da cobertura, y contando con nuestra presencia policial y la seguridad que nos ofrece Live Nation, invitamos a todas las personas a que vengan a divertirse, a probar la comida, habrá música también, y obviamente que regresen todos a disfrutar esto. Nosotros hemos hecho nuestro trabajo debido y estamos con muchas ganas esperando que se dé el evento. Gracias.
Gracias, Armando. That's it. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Isabel. Next up, Elena Gomez of 6ABC.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much. A lot of my questions have been answered in regards to the shooting outside of Kensington, outside of Willard Elementary School in Kensington. But one of the things I wanted to ask is there was a recent announcement to offer a $10,000 reward for shootings that happened near schools. Even though this didn't happen inside the school or during school hours, is that reward still being offered for information leading to an arrest of a suspect in this case?
I don't see why not. The gun was fired near a school, and we'll have to see if we can make an arrest and see whether or not that information was critical in making an arrest. And if the police have anything to add, please.
We each and every reward that is offered, we weigh our options and we send the request if we think someone is deserving through our chain of command over to the mayor's office. So if someone is deserving, and you got to remember it's for an arrest and conviction, so it takes some time to have that administered, but we do it in each and every case where it's deserving.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next up, we'll go to Saj Purple Blackwell of Community Radio. Saj?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. We are going over the trends for the shootings, and we see that there are more, of course, gun violence victims than actual homicides. So the family from 5200 block of Harlan, who was had multiple shootings earlier this month, have contacted me and said that they haven't been contacted at all from the Philadelphia Police Department after this shooting, and there's no follow-up and there's no resources they feel. What is the process for all of these people who have been affected by gun violence after the shooting?
As far as the investigation, I will ensure that the assigned investigators in any of those cases do follow up. They try to do that. You got to understand, and I, it's no excuse, but some of these investigators are getting hit with multiple cases. So, and it's been a pretty busy summer. So I will make sure that that happens. But the district captain, the victims assistance officers, all follow up as part of what we do as our process. So I will ensure that that's being done, and we'll document that and make sure we get back to it.
Okay, thank you very much.
And Purple, if I could address kind of the contact for resources, there are a number of victim services organizations across the city that do direct services to individuals who have been impacted. That is not a service that directly provided by the city, but there are folks who are funded to do that work. I would encourage you, if you're in contact with this family, if they're ready to receive supports, that you directly connect them to one of the service providers in the city.
Absolutely, thank you. Because this is something ongoing. There have been many families, and this is just one that I chose to highlight today.
We can provide you with some information to make sure that they get connected to the appropriate services. Yes.
Thanks, Ash. Thank you both. And we have one final question from our partners at Hong Chinese, ines.org.
Yeah. Hi, hello everyone. I have a question for Mayor Kenny and Commissioner Outlaw. With the move of the Chinatown placement, I just typed the my question to the chart.
I'm sorry, I didn't get it all.
Oh, okay. I will read that.
Mayor, her question is in the chat.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I'll read it aloud. It says, with the move of the Chinatown Police Department, the crime rate in Chinatown area has gone up tremendously. 2 shootings in one day last week, but one in all of last year. Chinatown has gone from a safe place to being a dangerous place. Is this just the beginning, and what can you tell the community?
I don't think the movement of police administration building created an additional shooting. We had buildings old, it's dysfunctional, and we needed to do something differently. Unless you're talking about the 6th district. And Joel, I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, she's talking about the 6th police district.
Oh, okay. I thought
The
you were talking about
deployment didn't change. We still maintain the same coverage, although the district has moved. We still have the same coverage within those zones. If anything, we actually increased our presence in Center City. That's part of our Center City security plan that we've been working on for the past year. So if you have other concerns or issues, please reach out to the captain and let the captain know exactly where you're seeing issues, what problems you're seeing, so the captain can address that issue.
That it, Kevin?
Yep, seeing no other hands raised, that will conclude today's briefing. We will reconvene again in 2 weeks. Thank you everyone for joining us. Have a good day, everyone.